Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I am John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. A good topic today. Let's do it. What's the creepiest thing a kid has ever said to you? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. When I was pregnant with my second kid, my son was 3. The day before my first scan, out of nowhere, he looked at the sky and waved and said, "Bye-bye, baby." It was eerie AF because he used to come out with weird shit like that. Next day I have the scan. She feels a heartbeat and I was like, phew, LOL. My weird little psychic son said, and she frowned and asked me if twins run in my family. I said, yes. She said she needs to get a doctor, and they told me I'd just miscarried my daughter's identical twin. It was weird AF. I was babysitting this kid with his little sister. He was very quiet and definitely going through some things. I knew that he came from an abusive background and was living with his mom after his dad had custody taken away, but I didn't know anything about the abuse, just going through the motions of the evening babysitting. He was a quiet little guy, just sitting down watching a movie in silence most of the evening on the floor. He'd eaten dinner kind of in silence. He said thank you, but sort of slightly like thanks. I just went back to watching the movie his mother already had on before I got there. I'd paused the movie briefly for dinner, and everything was going okay. She had texted me, and I said everything was going great, just about to put him down for the night. She said that with everything she hasn't been too hard on him, so would appreciate just letting him fall asleep, and that he usually fell asleep with movies on. So I was like, whatever. He moved to the floor, so I was just going to get comfortable on the couch. I just laid down on the couch with my feet hanging off the edge, because I'm not an animal. When he turned around and glared at me, I thought maybe that bothered him, so I sat up and started watching the movie with him. He just kept glaring at me, so I said, "Do you need anything?" I'm not kidding. His word-for-word response to me, in all the years of my life I will never forget. While still glaring at me, he said, this is the first full sentence all night. I had been babysitting at this point about 2 hours. "No, but if I were you, I'd be careful getting comfortable. If you let your guard down, I will stab you." Then, without missing a beat, turned back to the TV and started watching the movie again, like he didn't say shit. I texted the mother what happened. She texted me back, "I am so sorry. I had heard from other sitters that he was hostile, and that they never came back, but I never knew why. They never told me." I have to say, but yes, I was part of the line of babysitters that never came back. Christmas Day years ago, my son had just turned 3. We went to my aunt's house and she was hosting the day from my dad's side of the family. My dad passed away when I was 15, so my son parked himself at the front door and wouldn't come get food or join in. He then comes to get my aunt and I and says we have to open the door because the man wants to come in. We thought it was imagination, but he got agitated and said the tall man wants to come in. Then he ran to the living room and pointed at a photo of my dad. I'd never explained to him that my dad had died or showed him photos or anything. And my dad was sitting in the photo. No indication he was tall, 6'4", so we opened the door a few minutes just in case. I was not exempt from being dragged to church by my mother up through my finishing high school and ultimately moving out. One Sunday, the pastor's daughter, Southern Baptist Church, sat next to me in one of the middle rows where playing on her iPad. I was maybe 16 or 17 years old at the time, and his daughter was maybe 8 or 9. We had just finished with the opening hymns when she tugged on my shirt to get my attention. I looked down at her, and she motioned with her hand for me to lean in so she could whisper something. So I leaned in, and she whispered in my ear completely 100% unprompted. "I have dreams where you are all screaming and bleeding all over this room." I slowly turned to look at her, and she was smiling ear to ear at me, before slowly turning back to look up at her father as he was finishing his opening prayer. She then went back to her regularly scheduled program, and I found a new seat and a new religion. When I was too little to be able to remember it clearly, but I hope, and hopped on the couch, grabbed my jack-o'-lantern candy holder, it was close to Halloween, and held it in front of me like a steering wheel. Told my dad to get in and we were going home. No, my home, my real home. And when he just stood there staring at me, I went, well, alright. Pretended to reverse, then pretended to drive, shifting gears and all. Scared the hell out of my dad, lol. Is this a weird past life thing? Where'd she learn to shift? But honestly, there was no other home. I was just being a weird baby. I once joined a Counter-Strike game on Mirage or whatever. There I was playing with randoms. I was talking for some time, telling, hey, go there, go here, and please drop weapons, etc. So in short, this happens on a match with 8 other players. There was this one guy in our team. He asked me where I'm from, so I told him, not thinking on it any further than that. Out of nowhere, this guy starts talking my language. He said a lot of info about me, down on personal level, and so far I yet didn't know this guy. Now, that for sure was creepy. Apparently he knew my dad, who was a soccer ball trainer at one period in his life. And he also remembered my voice from me also playing soccer too. I first was scared for several rounds, so I couldn't speak anymore. It's scary, you know, online, and as someone knows you like that, who you are and tells you up front like that. I thought he was somewhat of a hacker, in real life scammer or hitman, if you will. More of that had come for me. So here we were ending up on the same server, 2 guys from the same country and the same city, and we had played on the same soccer team. And this was still it. It happened among several million other players at the time. Amazing. And at the same time, yeah, very creepy for sure. Years ago, we were at a gathering at our friend's house. It was in the evening and started to get dark. As the kids started heading inside the house, my niece, about 3 or 4 at the time, mentioned she saw some soldiers outside. Mind you, this was way out in the sticks in upstate of South Carolina, and not much development of any kind around besides peach fields and row pastures. Creepy thing is, Cowpens National Battlefield, site of a 1791 American Revolution battle, was only a few miles down the road. Same house, but maybe some months later, it was around 10 p.m., and I was alone and walking up the driveway to my friend's house when I hear my name called from the darkness. It sounded similar to my friend's voice, and so I answered and took a few steps toward it, thinking it was my friend, but stopped because something just felt off. I felt super creeped out. I went inside and my friend was in his room. No one had been outside at all. This topic has steadily grown on me. I remember my son when he was young, he had this thing where he was like looking up at the corner of the ceiling, and I don't know if I kind of led him to the answer, but he was alluding to the fact that based on what he was saying, that I thought it was my dad. Makes you feel good, but kids also have wonderful imaginations, and sometimes we hear what we want to hear, but either way, this definitely makes you go, at least, right? Pretty cool. My own daughter liked to tell me about living in the mountains with her grandma before she came to live with me. I thought it was just one of those things toddlers like to make up. That was until one day my parents had to put up an old picture of my paternal granny in their house. When the little one seen it, she, quick as lightning, said, "That's my grandma." Now my daughter had never met her, as she passed away when I was about 11. We never had any pictures up of her or talked about her in my daughter's 3 years of life. To make it creepier, she explained to me one day that Grandma now lives on a hill under a big stone and a big tree. The hair on my neck stood on end, because that's a pretty accurate description of the graveyard she's buried in. A graveyard my daughter has never been to. I decided one day to put my daughter into her car seat and asked her to direct me to where Grandma lives. The graveyard is only about a 20-minute drive from where we live, but my daughter had never been to it before this day. She directed me perfectly along the roads to the graveyard, and when we got there, I asked her to show me which stone Grandma lives under. That paranormal princess confidently led me directly to the grave and proudly announced, "This is where Grandma is." To this day, it still gives me chills thinking about it. My baby cousin's witches. When I was 12, we lived with my auntie, uncle, and younger cousins who were 7, 5, and 3. I had to share a bed with the 3-year-old. She was a really smart little kid, a big vocabulary for her age, and an imagination to match. One night, we were laying in bed, and suddenly she started crying and pointing at the corner of the room furthest from us. The only light was the street lights outside. I said, "What's wrong, Jay? What's there?" I wasn't able to see anything, not even a spider, which I thought it was. My baby cousin said through tears, "The witches are looking at us. They're mean." I was freaking out inside by this time, as I still couldn't see anything, so I asked her, "How many witches can you see, Jay?" She answered, still crying in my arms, "There are 3, and they're coming." I started to feel slightly unnerved by this, as obviously none of my baby cousins were not allowed to watch scary film programs or listen to scary stories, especially at 3. So this came out of the blue. All I could do at this time was to distract my baby cousin by telling her I wouldn't let the mean witches get her, and singing her nursery rhymes until she fell asleep in my arms. I didn't sleep at all that night, lol. My cousin is now a beautiful, successful teacher with a gorgeous 1-year-old girl herself, and like a lot of people, we talk about our childhood. She remembers a lot of the things we did together, but she never remembers that night. I dated a girl with a much younger brother when I was 19. He was my little buddy then. By the time he was 6, he would periodically talk about seeing this person outside he called a bizarre name. I don't remember anymore, but they lived 20 minutes outside the nearest little town in dense woodland. He seemed to only see him at night and only described him as an Indian with a white paint. I should also mention, this was a native family. His dad was a lead man dancer and tribal elder. They had a hot stone lodge they allowed members of their tribe ceremonial use of. And it's not really weird or surprising this little boy had seen lots of people in paint. But they shouldn't be wearing paint standing outside the house at night, so that's something. I split with his sister after 3 years, and I met him again years later at a powwow. Just Dad was still a big dancer. I don't know what's what, but I was crushed. He was like 13, had sprouted into this big, strong little man, sounded like a bass, and he was timid, scared, quiet as a mouse, and seemed intellectually delayed. When he was 4 to 7, he seemed like a completely ordinary, bright, curious, verbal little boy. So I wondered if something terrible had happened to him, or maybe repeatedly, by one of the visiting members, or even elders. I don't know. I sort of asked his sister some questions, but I couldn't really bring myself to make a point, and she wasn't super interested in talking to me, even years after our breakup. Your post is all it took to remind me of everything, except what he called that creepy guy he saw. I'm going to be thinking of that for a while now. My brother and I were doing the plumbing for a family friend. Really rough neighborhood, really rough house. The family didn't speak English. They were from Mexico, but spoke an indigenous language I can't name, so we couldn't even get by on my terrible Spanish. The oldest girl, like 11, is our translator. The plumbing's a mess. We have to squeeze through this little hole in the floor and to do the work, where there are rats everywhere, and the house start wearing on us. We get a little loopy and we start our jokes. I start meowing every time I'm going into the crawl space to trick the rats, and then my brother starts going, "Look out, I'm a cat," when he climbs in. Jokes go on to the idea of painting on whiskers, etc. The little girl hears us and is confused. She wants to know what we're scared of. My brother, in his way, tells this kid that there's a baby down there, that it crawls around really fast and has red eyes. He said it so quick and confident that I didn't have a chance to interrupt him. This was not something he should say to a kid who will have to keep living in that house long after we're gone. Her face dropped and she looked down the hole. I got sick to my stomach because I knew the story was too far. Her posture stiffened. She turned and looked me right in the eye, and with a voice of authority, barely registered glee, she said to me, "Catch it for me." This was about 30 years ago. I wanted to get a parrot, and I found this breeder. We went to the house. It was full from floor to ceiling of stuff. Beanie Babies, clothes, you name it. In hindsight, it was likely a hoarder house. The birds were in the basement. They appeared well cared for, so I bought one. The man had a wife and a 5 to 6-year-old daughter. When we were leaving, this little girl wrapped her arms around my legs and said, "I want to go home with you. Will you be my mommy?" Her father was standing right there. He redirected her and we left. As it turned out, the parrot I got had Pacio's disease, a very infectious fatal disease. My parrot died a week after purchase. I had to sue the mother in small claims court to get my money back. I always wondered what happened to that little girl. When my son was around 3 or 4, I was getting him and my sister ready for bed. I was having a very rough time emotionally. Don't remember why now. My kids are adults now. As I was walking down the hallway with my daughter, my son came out of his room. The lights were off and I had already put him in bed. As he steps into the hallway, he's looking back into the dark room and says, "Okay." I looked because there was only the 3 of us in the house, and then asked him, "Who are you talking to?" He replied, "Aunt Sherry says she loves you." I froze for a second, then looked in the room and said, "I love you too." Sherry was the name of my older sister, who passed away at 3 months old. I had never told my children about her, as they were too young to understand. I obviously never met my sister. I was born 5 years after she passed. My daughter also would make comments when she was around 3 or 4 about her great-Grammy visiting her. She would describe the lady that would come to talk with her sometimes. She told me the lady sometimes wore a blue nightgown, sometimes yellow, and sometimes purple. I bought my grandmother nightgowns in those colors when she was in her final stage of cancer. When I was growing up, my grandmother would always ask me, "Are you my girl?" whenever she would give me a hug. My daughter told me the lady would ask her, "Are you my girl?" I knew it had to be my grandmother. She passed away several years before I had my daughter. A guy tried to follow us into our apartment building. I got my kid inside and locked the door behind us. My kid said, "He was going to kill us, Mom." And I said, "I don't think so, baby. I just didn't know him, so we didn't want to let him in." Whatever my kid said, "No, Mom, he was." Anyways, I found out later he in fact was planning to kill us. Broke into the neighbors with a knife and a murderous voice in his head. Police caught him. As a kid, I saw a ghost in my dad's house, and my niece, who lives there with my sister, has an imaginary friend she talks to a lot. She's named Stella, and my kids, little, no reason for them to have ever heard my ghost story, but heard us talk about Stella all the time, and they'd seen her, so I describe her for me, and my kid describes the ghost I had seen when I was younger to a T.